Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Can you let me know here in the comments if you can hear us? Oh, thank you. Thank you, Marie. Thank you, Jenna, Fabiano, Manuel, everybody, Kevin. Thank you so much. So we're going to get started. My name is Julio. I know many of you know me because you've been working with FPP for many years. We are very happy to be here today. We received 150 registrations for this webinar. So we are thrilled with the response. It's great to have to be in touch with all the Canadian friends. And I'm here with Carlos. Carlos is from Finoo, and he will have a chance to introduce himself. So without further ado, let's get started. We are going to be talking about a survey we decided to run with students from many countries, around 20 different countries, because we wanted to understand how the recent Canadian government measures would impact their choice of studying in Canada. Every student that got our survey had indicated when they registered to one of our events that they were planning to study in Canada. And we got overwhelmed with the response. More than 5,000 students responded to the survey, students from Brazil, Mexico, Colombia, Peru, lots of countries in Latin America, many countries from French-speaking Africa, English-speaking Africa, North of Africa, India, as you will see in the presentation. We were able to get a huge number of insight that we are not able to have everything today on the presentation, but we are working on a document that you will be able to download from our website when it's done. There's a lot of information that we hope can help you with your strategies. For those today here, we are going to have a brief agenda. First, I'm going to talk about FPP just a little bit because some of you don't know FPP, I imagine. Then just a few, 2-3 minutes, I promise. Finoo, Carlos will introduce Finoo, which is a tech company. Carlos and Finoo, they approached FPP with this idea of surveying students, and we loved his idea, and we went ahead and implemented that. Then we're going to dive into the survey and share lots of different insights with you. And finally, we're going to talk about EduCanada because we are going to have many EduCanada events upcoming. We have a long tour in Africa in January, and we also have 5 different online EduCanada taking place this upcoming semester in 5 different regions in the world. So yes, so FPP, many of you know FPP, but just so you know, FPP is a company that I started in 1997. We are a tech company, and we have been over this 27 years a tech company, but we have our expertise in solutions for universities to recruit students. So you probably know our events. We do in-person and online events. We have our own platform that we develop, and every technology we use, we produce them. So basically, we are a tech company with expertise in events. We have different solutions, as I told you, marketing, email blast, social media, and we have something now that we developed after these new measures from Canada and Australia, which we call FPP Funds Check. FPP Funds Check is a powerful tool for verifying the authenticity of financial resources provided by international students and their sponsors. So, sometimes students are supposed to provide documents that show about their finance, if they have the funds necessary to study. And we hear that sometimes these documents are manipulated, and it's impossible for admissions in a university to know about every single bank in the world, what it looks like, and if that has been manipulated or not. So we developed this. We connect virtually with every single bank in the world to guarantee the balances they send to you are real. We also use artificial intelligence. And so this is fun. I'm not. If you would like more information, we can provide you with more information. So basically, everything we do, we try to innovate so our clients see results. So we have in mind that we need to give you good results, so we can have another 27 years ahead of us. And as you know, we've been organizing Edu Canada. We are very honored and very proud to have been organizing Edu Canada events since 2013. We started in Brazil, then we started doing Edu Canada on behalf of the government all over Latin America, and then we did in the Middle East, Africa, and it's been an honor for FPP to partner and have been selected by the government to organize their great events. This picture, you see myself there, and this is the Canadian ambassador at one of our events. And just as we do in all our events and Edu Canada events, we have our proprietary technology with students and universities, and I'll be talking more about Edu Canada. The student world, which took part of this survey as well. The student world is FPP student-facing brand. So if you ask students about FPP, they will say they never heard it. They have never heard about it. But the student world is how they engage with us, and we are probably one of the organizers, probably the one that has more followers online. We have over 2.3 million students following us on social network. So that helps us when we talk to students, when we promote our events, when we ask them about surveys. They get it, and they recognize our brand, and that's great. Now I'd like to introduce Carlos to briefly explain about Finoo. Carlos, please.
Yeah, thank you so much, Julio, and hello everyone. While Julio was starting, I was already going through the chat and seeing all the names here, familiar names. So I can't help but send some special shout outs to Fabiano from Langara. John is here as well, Stephanie. So many people that I've met across these long years in this great industry. So it's so good to see you guys. And the idea that I discussed with Julio for the call today, guys, is really to feel like we are all in a meeting, right? Exchanging these ideas. Because part of what Julio mentioned at the beginning, the reason behind why we did this is we've all been going through these uncertainty last month, right? There's been a bit of let's say more questions than answers, and that has made our jobs, all of our jobs, recruiters, fair organizers, whatever, a lot more challenging, right? And we felt that it would be great for us to put the resources and do this major survey here to actually understand how the people we serve, which are the students, are seeing all of this, right? Are being affected or not by all of this. And we felt that this data that we're going to be sharing with you today could really come of handy for all of you on your next recruitment goals there, next semester and so on. So I was very excited with this project, and I want you to know that we're going to do our best to keep launching these intel for you. As Julio said, the student world gives us an incredible access to thousands, if not millions of people out there across the world. And yeah, we have to get this data. We have to hand it over to you guys so you can have, the best decisions possible, and make sure that your recruitment, that your university don't suffer from these uncertainty that we are all going through. So, yep, without further ado, I'm super excited as well to introduce you all for the first time, Finoo here. So yes, many of you might know me with all my years that I spent at FPP. But since 2022, I started a new company called Finoo that you all see here. And what we are is we're building the world's first digital bank for international students. So our vision is very clear, guys. It's to empower millions of global students out there to fund and afford their education abroad, right? Their education at your schools. So we put together an incredible team around the world that I'm so excited to lead. And yeah, this is one of the first times that I'm sharing these news. Some of you know, but yeah, but very quickly before we get to the good part, which is the intel that Julia and I put together. There's a few things that I want to mention you. Maybe you're aware, but maybe you're not. But did you know that banks and these financial institutions that we all work with, they're actually making the cost of your programs more expensive? Why is that? Because the fees that is charged on top of every transaction the student has to do, the international transactions, just keep adding and adding and adding on to the price, to the cost for them, right? And what's the result for that, short term and long term? Short term is that it means that more students needs to end up postponing their plans just to apply to your schools because they need more time to save up their money. And long term means that the market is being shrinking because less and less people are able to afford. But now, as you see there on the screen, is not only the high transaction fees charged by these major companies out there and banks, but it's also the process of currency depreciation. That's the biggest villain on this situation. I'll give you an example, guys. Some of you know I'm from Brazil, right? In the past month, the Brazilian real, which is the currency there, has taken a major dive, right? And what that means is that Brazilian students now need to come up with even more money to be able to afford the same price that you guys charge. That never changes. So there's a lot of components here that are affecting the students' ability to afford your school. And what we are doing at Finoo is to make sure that we can use all the new technologies that are available to lower all of these. So at the end, the students pay for their university and not their bank. It's a slogan, by the way, we use at the beginning. Major companies that you all are familiar with, maybe you work with, they're good and solid at processing transactions, but they're missing the point here, right? Because the biggest pain that students are suffering, none of them are helping to solve. Because the way these companies work, and I'm sure you are familiar with, they work simple as a payment gateway, right? So the student needs to make the first payment, super excited, yay, to your school. Then they see the options, maybe they click on Flywire. What they go is to a page where they can simply select, I'm using my credit card, I'm using a bank transfer, but that's it. Flywire is not doing anything, and none of these companies are for the students. So that's really what sets us apart. So again, I would say that Finoo is where recruitment meets finance. So everything we do here is to empower students so at the end of the day, they're able to afford your studying at your school, right? But again, I'm not going to get into this because this is not the point of today's call. Everybody's waiting to see the intel, which is super interesting. So I'm going to skip this. But again, at the end, we're going to be sharing our context, right? So I would love to sit with you all talk about the results of this intel, maybe a few questions regarding, what you should do next, but also to share a little bit about how your school can partner with Finoo, right? So thanks a lot, guys. And now we move on to the reason we're all here, right? So when all of this started, I'll tell you a very brief story of how this idea came to mind. I did a quick trip to Canada this year in which I visited a few people, Fabiano included, here in British Columbia. And in all the conversation I was having with the recruiters, they were all expressing their concern about, we don't know what's going to happen because these measures are being implemented and they don't give us much information, them being sometimes the central government, right? So I felt that there was a lot of uncertainty on that. And then I head back to Brazil and I talked to Julio and said, hey, listen, maybe we can do something because we can understand how these students are feeling, if they are aware, first of all, of these measures. And if they are, how are they perceiving this, right? Is this changing what their plans to study in Canada, right? So then Julio and I and the whole team at FPP and Finoo started to debate a little bit, how could we organize this survey to get the most valuable intel possible, right? So what we did, guys, we showed them, the students. First of all, we asked them, are you aware of that there has been some changes, right? Without communicating them. Then we went on the 5 main changes, right? The 5 main measures, policy changes that happened, that took place, right? So those being the gap on the number of student visa that was going to be issued in 2024, those being the potential end on the waiver for the working hours off campus. The other one was the rules for the PGWP programs for certain students that would not be able to apply for it anymore. The visa on the spouse. So we condensed 5 main measures, right? And we show them these measures and we say, how does that make you feel, right? How does this change your plan to study in Canada? So as Julio mentioned, we conducted this survey across 3 different continents, 20 different countries. And right now we're going to show you how each of them responded, right? Before we get into that, important to say that we decided to filter the students who would answer this to only people that had demonstrated interest in studying Canada first, right? We want to go over in different publics as well, different demographics, but first we target only students that have demonstrated interest in studying Canada, all right? By the way, now that we're gonna get started, please feel free to share all of the questions that you might have here on the chat. Julia and I will keep an eye on it. And again, the idea for this, guys, for really close your eyes and think that we are in a big conference room all together, right? All right, so let's start with the first region here, folks. And we're gonna go over different regions, different countries, and explore how each region responded to these, all right? Yeah, absolutely, Gina. I can put those. If you just give me a second, I'll do that in a minute. All right. Cool. All right. So the first region, guys, we focus. It's a major region for Canada, which is Africa. So what we did was we divided those 2 in English-speaking countries and French-speaking countries, right? So what you see here on the screen is how the Africa English-speaking countries responded to these. Okay, so these countries are Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, mainly those. But as you can see, a few more: South Africa, and I'll also share all the list of all countries here: Ethiopia, Ghana, so on. So as you see on the left, guys, the very first question that we did was, were you aware of these changes? That was the first question, right? And as you see on the top of the slides, 57.4%, so almost 6 every 10 students in Africa, in these countries, were already aware, which for me personally came as a surprise, right? And especially because when we compare this level of awareness to other regions, as you will see soon, this is much higher than, for example, Latin America, Brazil, and so on, which shows that students, international students in these particular countries in Africa, they are following what's happening, right? They're doing their research and they are aware of this. So next time you encounter them, most likely, most of them will already be aware and will ask these questions. So that was the first thing, guys. Were you aware of these changes before this survey or not, right? 60%, close to 6%. Yes, we knew this, right? Then we ask, all right, now that you are aware of these changes that we clearly stated on the survey, how do you feel about it, right? Are you feeling more inclined to go study in Canada? Are you feeling less inclined? Are you now going to need perhaps to postpone your students, right? Or these have no impact whatsoever on your plans, right? So this, as you can see on the left, it's quite distributed, right? With 30% showing that it has no impact at all, right? Which again, it came as quite a surprise because we're talking about 5 different measures, right? 5 different major policy changes. So, but then you have 17% who say they're more inclined, right? 21% saying they would need to postpone their studies. We're gonna see this, guys, a lot throughout the region, right? And finally, the 27%, so close to another 30%, saying I'm feeling now less inclined to go and carry on my plans to study in Canada, right? Now, we're gonna understand, we're gonna dive deep into what those less inclined actually means, right? But then on your right, then we look at each of those measures individually, right? And we show them, right? So how do measure 1, right? So this gap on the number of this reduction on the number of student visa that Canada will be issuing in 2024 compared to the year before. How does that communicate to you? How does that make you feel, right? And then they responded, they had 3 options. First one, doesn't impact me. I don't care, right? Second one, actually, I'm going to postpone my study most likely because of this. And third, a bit more dramatic, I will cancel probably my plans on studying Canada, right? So if you see, guys, the blue for no impact, yellow for the postpone, and red for cancellation, when you look at all together, you can kind of see which measures were more impacted and less meaningful, right? So for example, we look at the very last one, the work permit for spouses, right? So 72% saying no impact at all, which makes a lot of sense, right? But then we get the biggest, the greatest impact in this among these 5 measures, which was this visa reduction number, right? So the 30% gap compared to 2023, right? And why, when we talk about this measure specifically, guys, this one, the visa reduction, differently from the other 4. The other 4 we're talking about, a change on the working hours that you can do off campus. We're talking about no longer having a possibility to apply to a PGWP, depending on which type of student you are. We're talking about a major increase in the amount that students need to have when applying for a visa, going from 10,000 to 20,000, so doubling that, and the work permit for spouses. So unlike the other 4 who can affect you directly, this first measure talks more of a general thing. And for me personally, it was very interesting to see that in case of these English-speaking countries in Africa, they voted as that one as the greatest impact, right? So a measure that is maybe not directly per se impacting them, but is maybe communicating a message, right? That is being felt a bit more harsh by the students from this area. So Also, guys, the other point that we're making here, that we're sharing with you, is which countries were most impacted and least impacted by each of these measures, right? So if we go on, for example, this first one, the gap on student visas, see most impacted Ethiopia and Nigeria, right? And these two countries particularly, they were the most impacted in all the three first measures, as you see there on the slide. In fact, Ethiopia was the most impacted in all of the measures, right? So that was super interesting. Another interesting data, how to see that different countries are reacting differently from these policy changes, right? And then you have the least impacted measures there, Kenya and Ghana. Also Ghana in all of the measures, right? So that is very interesting to point out how students from Ghana did not feel quite an impact on these policy changes compared to other students, right? So again, if you have questions, if you have insights, shoot here on the chat. The idea is for us to collaborate. I think the biggest word for today is collaboration. So maybe you are interacting with recently students from these countries. If you can share your perception here. Do you agree? Do you disagree? What have you seen differently? Put here in the chat. Let's collaborate to each other, right? Now, moving on here, guys, is now the final question we did on the survey, right? Which is, once aware of these changes, right, will you now consider going to another destination? This is a major question that we put at the end of the survey. And as you can see there, 60%, so again, 6 out of 10 said, you know what, this might be good, this might not be good, but I'm stick with my plans on studying Canada. So that was the good news, the good result coming from this particular region, right? Especially when we compare to other regions, you will see that clearly soon enough. These countries, they're still very convinced, right? With the idea, they're sticking to the idea of applying to study in Canada in the next few months, year. So they're super interested. But we also saw that a good percentage of them, so 12% said, no, actually, yes, I'm now considering another country, in this case, the USA with 12%. Also, Australia is striking 6.6%, which for me, when I was analyzing the data, also came a bit of a surprise. Very interesting to know the strength of Australia in this market. And the UK pointed out as 4.4%. European Union 12, right? So when we put those together, we have close to 30% of students saying that they're now going to be considering other destinations in light of these changes. This is very interesting, guys, especially because for you guys, when we go to those countries to recruit, you know that you're not competing against the Canadian schools no longer. You're competing with schools from everywhere, right? And knowing how they are, which countries they are, which other destinations now may be a bit more of a hard competition to you is very interesting, because you can also play along with it. Maybe they're not aware of some other, maybe in the US, very similar situations to Canada. I don't know, right? But having this data helps you get a bit more prepared when you face those students. Anyway, Julio, anything that you want to comment before we get into the key findings here on this region?
No. Well, just one thing. We need to understand how the survey was done. Students were impacted with questions, right? As you see, some students were aware and some students were not aware. So students that were not aware of both cases, they learned, we don't know about from which source, and those that didn't know, you didn't have a chance to defend Canada. It was just a question. How do you feel about this now? Oh, Canada is doing this. So my reaction is that they expressed in the survey. As we're going to show you, this is Africa speaking English countries. We're going to show you also the African French speaking. We're going to show you about Brazil, about India, about Spanish speaking Latin America. But of course, you still have a chance to defend Canada and see what can be done. And I think that can reverse. It's possible to reverse their feeling to a certain extent, right? And we're also going to be talking about some suggestions for strategy and the big picture. But yeah, that's all for me, Kadu. Please go on.
Awesome. Yeah, and I already see a question here from Kevin. We're gonna get to that point, Kevin, in more towards the end. But thanks for sending it, guys. Now the final thing is what we pointed out as the key findings, right? But again, today is a teaser, right? We are working on this full report that we want for you to have it. So in that, you're gonna see way more insights on the different demographics, target groups, and so on. But here's the 5 key findings that we saw in the way they behave, the students from these particular countries behave. And I want to go to each one of them a bit more slowly so we can process, right? So the first key findings, as you saw, it was a high awareness of these policy changes, right? Close 6 every 10 students were already aware, right? And again, we're talking about recent policy changes. This has been months, right? Maybe a year. So is this for me shows the level of commitment of these students, because they're constantly researching, they're aware of what's happening, they're taking those things into account. So these are people that are committed, right? So that's the good news I see there, right? Now, the second key insight is, and this is, I had to read this 2 or 3 times to actually understand what it meant, because it says that students age 18 to 22, so a bit younger students, they were the group that was more impacted in terms of postponing their plans, right? But a bit of older students, 23 to 27 age group, was feeling at the end of the day less inclined to carry on with their plans, right? So although younger students felt a bit more harsh, right? The result was, I'm not going to cancel this, I'm just going to postpone it, right? Especially because lots of the measures had resulted in an increase in financial requirements, right? So that was, for me, it was very interesting. Then the third insight we have here that is also very interesting is related to the field of studies that students were interested in. So as you see there on the slides, it says that business and economics students are the most impacted, with the highest percentage considering postponement and feeling less inclined. In contrast, STEM, which is science, technology, students feel more inclined to study in Canada despite the changes, right? For me, when I first read that insight, it was almost like contrasting with the one above. But then I understood that, STEM students sometimes are more like master's, doctoral students, which are 28 years plus, right? So it makes sense. But it was interesting to see how, based on the field of studies, they were receiving those things differently, right? And maybe this is a good information as well for when you start targeting, finalizing or making your new targets for your recruitment season, right? Maybe target towards STEM students more rather than business students or so on. So again, all of these data, guys, it has the same purpose, to help you make better decisions later on, right? Now, the fourth key finding on this was the education level related, right? Something we already touched, which is master students were less impacted than bachelor students, right? Reporting almost no impact at all on their plans, right? So again, it makes sense when we think about the main measures that the main policy changes that were in place there, right? So again, this part for me, it came as no surprise, but also interesting to highlight and see clearly. In the last one is related to the countries, again, how different countries responded differently, right? So students from Nigeria, for example, in Ethiopia, are more determined to study in Canada, while students from Kenya show the highest indication to consider other destinations, which again, it helps us when we're planning our strategies for what's coming next, right? And anyway, so that was a teaser, guys, with just a few information about this first region, right? Now, we're going to move on to the next region, which was still in Africa, but now targeting the French-speaking countries, right? And how they responded to these changes. So, as you can see, there's already a very interesting fact, which is the level of awareness of students in these particular countries, right? Which countries are we talking about here? Algeria, Cameroon, Cote d'Ivoire, Tunis, right? And look at the difference, 43%, right? So close to 20% less than when we compare to the other countries, to the English-speaking countries in Africa, were aware of these changes, right? What does this mean, right? So then we asked them, let's see how they responded overall to the impact of those changes in their plans. In your left there, the first graph that you see. So we see a bit similar in the way of how they responded, right? With being the idea of postponing around 25%, which is similar to what we see in the other side. So the way they responded was quite similar to the other countries in Africa, but the level of awareness was massively less, right? Or could this mean that they are a bit less engaged? I don't think so. But what could that actually mean? That's the kind of data that we'll be providing to you later on, right? Then look at another major difference compared to the English-speaking countries. The greatest impact, the greatest policy change that had the greatest impact was not the reduction in the number of visa issued, was actually the increase in the amount of money students will need to prove they have when applying for the student visa, right? That was by far the greatest, had the greatest impact on these students, right? Could this mean that these students in these particular countries are a bit more, they take the financial aspects a bit more than the others? So these are all interesting discussions for us to have later on. But let's take a look here. So again, very similar in some ways to the other countries here. With working permit for spouses, that particular policy change, again, 65% saying it doesn't impact me at all, right? But look at this, the one that we just comment on. 34% of respondents say that that will make them cancel their plans, right? 43%, they will then postpone their plans. So we can see how financial price sensitive, if we can put this way, these students are, right? So maybe when we are talking, when we are addressing these markets, it's very important that we highlight to them these financial aspects of it, right? So because that's what they take more into account potentially. So again, this is very, very interesting data for us to help us understand how each region is reacting different to these. Let's move ahead and go to the final question. Again, once aware of these changes, will you now consider going to another destination? Good news, 62%, so still a high number, said no, I'm stick to Canada. That's where I want to go. That's what I'm gonna do, right? And you will see clearly the difference here when we talk about students in Latam, Brazil, and in other countries compared to this, that is still a high percentage, right? So, but you can also see here a big percentage of students that are now starting to consider Europe as a destination. Europe has always been strong competition for you guys for African students, right? I've personally lived in Europe and worked with European institutions for quite a while, and the numbers of African students here is massive. So it's indeed, I would say that clearly Europe can be a bigger competition for you guys than the US in this market, right? But let's take a look now at the key findings that we wrote it down. You will see some similarities from what we just noticed in the other region. Again, the first one being the high impact of financial requirements on Moroccan students. This is very interesting. So Morocco was the most impacted by increased financial requirements, with 86% affected. Further increase could limit Moroccan students studying in Canada. Again, this is very interesting intel because it shows how different countries are reacting different and what actually matter for students in that particular destination, right? The point number 2 that we put here, Algeria and Cameroon, high impact across multiple measures, right? So that when we see this, when we see the same markets showing higher sensitivity, right, over different measures, we can overall tell that those, as I just said, they're a bit more sensitive, right? But it's very interesting. So Algeria and Cameroon show high impact percentages across multiple measures, indicating high sensitivity to financial and policy changes, right? The other one is related to the field of study variations. Again, STEM versus humanities, what we've seen in the other regions, right? So STEM students show lower impact compared to business and humanities students, what we've just seen in the other region, right? Humanities students are more affected by financial and visa policy changes, right? And again, we believe that this data is very useful when targeting the students. Julio, did you mention anything?
Yeah, I think maybe we can go a little bit. We don't need to go item by item because we are going to share this with them. Just the big points. We already 42 minutes in the webinar, and we have some more things at the end to share.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's move a bit quicker, right? The idea today is for us to give you a bit of these sneak preview of what we're putting together, right? And yeah, so basically, I'm just gonna finish up this one, and for the next move a bit faster. But the fourth item here was the PGW, which is postgraduate work permit, right? Changes and desire to stay in Canada. The PGWP changes notably impact Moroccan students and Algerian students, right? So opportunity for post-study work are highly valued, influences study decisions in those particular countries especially, right? And again, this is super interesting to understand. The final key finding here is something we already saw in the other region, right? Which was younger students are particularly sensitive to policy changes, likely due to their dependence on external support and early stage of educational planning, right? So that was, again, completing our tour in Africa, but the French-speaking. Now we move across the Atlantic Ocean, guys, to the Latin market, right? Many of you have been going through to Latam for recruitment purpose for quite a while. We've seen you at the events at FPP there. Let's see how this particular market reacted to these changes compared to the others. Look, the most interesting fact that we have here, level of awareness. Were you aware of these changes before the survey? 25%. Look how different that is from what we've seen in Africa, right? Africa, English speaking, close to 60%. French speaking, still over 44%. Now it drops massively to 25%. So the vast majority of students who are planning on studying in Canada are not aware yet of these changes, right? So that is a very insightful information that helps you guys on how we the arguments that you use when getting to them, right? What's the best way to communicate this message, right? It gives you the power in that case, because they'll be hearing from you for the first time. But again, moving forward here, we'll see that the greatest impact, the measure with the greatest impact, as you see there, was again the increase on the amount needed for when applying for the visa, right? 48% said, now I'm gonna need to postpone my plan. So half of it, right, showing that they would need to postpone their plans. Now, when we take a look, guys, at the most impacted countries, right, what is it that we see there in terms of this, different from Africa, that we always had one country showing up in all of those different measures? Here is quite diverse. So the first one is the 35% gap, right, on student visa. Most impacted countries, Bolivia and Chile, right? Second one, the changes on the off-campus work hours, Chile and Panama, right? PGWP, Panama and Mexico being more affected. So maybe Mexican students are more interested in staying after the graduation, right, compared to other students. Most impacted by the increased amount on visa, Peru and Colombia. So super interesting to see how this market how different countries are reacting to these measures. But look at one final point on this slide here, Ecuador. Look how Ecuador showed up consistently on the least impacted in all of these measures here. This is extremely interesting to see, right? How the market in Ecuador is not as sensitive to these changes as we might think, right? Now, when we move, again, one important thing, this was a survey sent from Mexico all the way down to Chile, right? So all the countries that FPP and Julio have been consistently going year after year, Chile, Colombia, Ecuador, and so on, all of these. Now, let's take a look at this. And again, the final question, now that you're aware of this, are you considering other destinations? Look the difference compared to the Africa, guys. The part of the students who are saying that, no, I'm gonna stick with Canada, is much lower than what we've seen in Africa, 25%, right? Does that mean that the other 75, they have given up already? No, but it means that these measures, although these people are less aware, they tend to be more impactful. So super interesting to see this difference when we compare to Africa there, right? Another very important point, guys, that I want to make before we move on to the next region is how Europe is coming up very strong on this as a competition, right? You see in the case of Latin America, 37%, so almost 4 every 10 students saying they were now considering Europe, start comparing Europe and considering Europe on a potential place. So this is super interesting to see, right? Again, just going very quick on the key findings here for LATAM, right? First, financial constraints as a major barrier, right? So he says Peru, Colombia, Bolivia are highly impacted by increased financial requirements, right? Again, the point on the young adults highly impacted, right, by work regulations. We already mentioned this in the other in Africa, right? Same thing for business and economics. Again, being a bit more sensitive than other student study fields. Post-graduation work permits, right? So we see that a post-graduation work permit changes impact students from Panama and Mexico, as I mentioned, right? Very interesting to see how Mexico is more impacted by this. So it's perhaps something that they really take into their account in their plans, right? And here's a very important point, guys, that I haven't mentioned yet. The first part of the survey, we asked how they felt about these measures, right? But the second part of the survey, we asked who they were. So we were really specific on, number one, where are you from? What is your preferred field of study, right? What's your age? We even asked, how do you collect information, right? Study abroad information. And we also saw a major result on the digital thing, which might not come as a surprise. But if you look at the specific data later on in the report, there are some super interesting things. So LATAM students rely heavily on social media, Google, and university websites for information, right? Ensuring these platforms are comprehensive and engaging is essential. So again, like keeping the website updated on in how we actually communicate, we digest this message on these policy changes, right? And we put that in the website in a way that we can clearly show students that, wait a minute, it's not, might not be what you're thinking about. This is extremely important, right? Because it shows they're accessing your website. So again, super interesting insights here on LATAM, which is a major, major market for all of us. Now we head on to Brazil, right? Brazil, why Brazil is separate than LATAM? Brazil has very specific characteristics, right? Not only based on the language, but on the whole history that puts him a bit more different in most aspects when compared to the other countries in South America. Right, so we decided to look at Brazil individually here, and look at the first thing that comes to mind here, guys, is a bit of a similarity here on the awareness, right? So LATAM countries 25%, Brazil also very low, 24%. So the information hasn't yet arrived here for the market itself. Right, so that's very interesting. At the other hand, we see that 42%, so a bit higher, were felt that overall they were less inclined. So the feeling of how those policies were being shown did not have the nicest impact. Let's put this way, right? But again, you see some similarities here. Again, the greatest impact measure is the increase on the financial requirements here for study visa. So super interesting to see. Let's take a look here, guys, at the one thing that Brazil performed a bit better from the perspective of Canada here, which was now that you are aware, are you now going to consider other destinations? Same questions we've been going over and over. And again, no, 33% said I'm gonna stick to Canada, which if you compare to Latam was higher, right? So that was super interesting to see. Again, the US performing a bit stronger in Brazil compared to the countries in Latin America. So, but also Australia as well, super strong, 17%. So again, it's important to see what are the competition that you are having out there, right? That students are also considering. So I'm gonna go and I'm gonna skip this five. I'm just gonna mention the first one because it's very interesting, which is the shift in destination preferences, right? So as I just mentioned, close to 24% of students now consider Europe as an alternative to study destination. So super interesting to see this, guys. Again, we will see a repetitiveness and a trend here on the field of studies, how business and humanities students have been responded as well compared to the others. We'll see also an impact on digital information as a source as well here. So Julio, do you have any comment on Brazil before we move to the last one?
No, I think we need it to be a little bit faster because we don't have much time and there is a lot of information. Maybe because I think we are going to share this with them because maybe we can skip India, and when they can get the information there, they can see it, right?
Yeah.
I didn't want to go over time, but we are going to be a few minutes longer. So can I take it over from here?
Absolutely can. Just one point. So maybe people don't say, no, but I wanted to hear India. Just look at the awareness level, 70%, highest among all the regions that we survey here. Indian students are by far the most connected, the most aware of things that are going, perhaps the most committed. So this is super interesting. But now, go on.
Thank you, Kadu. And sorry to ask you to,
no worries.
Great. Okay. And then you guys, we'll share this with you. We will produce a more extensive. We could have done a lot more than this, Okay, Shelly, that's okay. But if you could, I have some very important information, like conclusions. If you could watch it later, that would be great. Okay, what I have here some slides that you can read by yourself when we give you that. But it shows the groups that are more resilient, right? So there we divide by age group, by nationality, by programs of interest. So STEM students are more resilient. Students from, as Kadu said, from Nigeria, Ethiopia are the ones that have a stronger determination in studying Canada. Indian students also highly aware. So you can see that. And the same thing, we have more information on other nationalities, on other topics. But what I wanted to talk about this, right? I was thinking, okay, what else can we give you guys in terms of suggestion or how to read the whole thing? I think the conclusion here is the same as it has always been. Quality is more important than quantity. You can get 10,000 leads, 50,000 leads, but if they are not from the students that can afford and have a better education, you will never be able to convert those students. That's a fact, right? So I had this pyramid here to show that especially countries where you recruit from, Latin America, Africa, India, Asia, Southeast Asia, you have lots of students that want to study, right? I remember when I went to India first time before we started doing events in India, and I always like to go to a country where we wanted to start having our events, having our flag on. And when I visit some hotels in India, and the events take place in usually in 5-star hotels, and I was talking to the person in charge, and I said, okay, this room is great for us. And then the person said, okay, what kind of event is that? I said, it's going to be a student fair. And then the person said, no, we cannot allow you to have student fair. I said, why? And then the person said, because even homeless people like to do that. And then, so my point is, if you talk to people in all these countries, do you want to go abroad to study abroad? They all want to go, right? Well, just to close the India thing, I told the person that we don't, the way we market, we don't bring this kind of, we screen students, we filter. At that time, everyone would do, commercials, ads on newspaper, and APP never did that. APP has always been online. So we were able to screen. But anyway, so the point is, in the base of pyramid, there's lots of people, but unfortunately, they can't afford. At the end of the day, they need to pay you, right? So it's better to focus on quality, like in terms of events or whatever you do, whatever marketing you do, you have to focus on quality. Fewer leads. Quality, and meaning here quality, I mean, good education and the resources. Usually those that have the resources, they come from, like, they have good education, they've been to very good schools, or they are at very good schools. Otherwise, people in the base of the pyramid, they can't even afford a flight. Can you imagine something now? It's sad, but I don't make the rules here. That's the way it is. So again, so quality is more important than quantity. Then the other thing, I think we should, so focusing on the 20%, 30% of the pyramid, which are students that have, if you go towards the middle of the pyramid, you see students that can plan. They can say, okay, I'm going to study abroad. I'm going to go to Canada and study in 2 years. So they start saving. They can do that. or their families can start saving and they can plan. So as you move up, when you go to the top, of course, people have no issues with costs. They can afford it, right? Then in terms of how do you do that? Because of course, students at the top, they have higher expectations, so they might like to go to universities that have better better known brand. Then your school cannot compete with that. Then you have to start aiming, coming lower at the pyramid. And then this, I hope this helps you, because you can see countries and how they are impacted financially and also in other terms. But one strategy that I usually share with representatives when we have meetings is about scholarships. All right. Scholarships are different from discounts. Okay. When you have a discount, you have to give to everyone. When you have scholarships, then you can choose who you give that to. And of course, if you start higher in the pyramid, you can offer 0 to little scholarship. Let's say I'll give you a 10% scholarship on tuition first year. Okay, maybe that's enough to get the student to come with you. Or if you have to go lower, then maybe you have to increase the scholarships. But again, you give the scholarships to the students that you think it's best, right? Could be, you could determine that, is it by merit, by an interview, you like the students, you like the personality. Because students, even though you give, scholarships can be a good strategy. As they become your alumni, they're going to be talking good about you, and they can promote you, they can be good students, they stay, they don't drop out. So I think that the whole point here is, what we see is that you have to focus on quality sources. And talking about quality sources, Edu Canada events, these are quality events. Why are they quality events? Because they have the government behind that. When a student sees an ad that this event is an official event from the Canadian government, for instance, they trust it, right? And they come with the expectation that universities and institutions attending are going to be are the good ones from Canada, right? Like when FPP does events, and we don't do Edu Canada because we have our own events, the Student World Expo, we invite lots of government representatives. So why? Because we need to we need the event to be seen as a prestigious, or as an event that they can trust. So Edu Canada, every time we have Edu Canada, we have students, they come with this idea that this is a quality event, and it's attended by more serious students, right? And we will just, I think, to end up, and I don't want to go, it's already 3 minutes after the time, the presentation. Just so you know, today we send a message to all of you. We're going to have Edu Canada in Africa again in January. Registrations are open. And we have one more country. We have Democratic Republic of Congo this year. And we will also have 5 Edu Canada events online, 5 online Edu Canada this year. Okay, we're going to announce them most likely tomorrow, no later than Monday. But the events are going to be in 5 different regions: Brazil, and then Spanish-speaking Latin America, French-speaking countries in Africa and Europe, Southeast Asia, and the MENA region, right? And the events are going to be two-day events. Optional. You can attend. You can register for day 1 or for day 2. Price in Canadian dollars, 1,500. Day 1 is going to be with students only. Like as you have attended our events, it's a free flow. Students come and visit university's virtual booth, and they collect information and they talk to representatives. And day 2 is going to be a networking event with high school counselors from the region and agents. And again, it's going to be in Brazil. For Brazil, we already have Belta confirmed as a partner. Belta will be inviting their agents to attend. But we will also have Southeast Asia, Spanish-speaking Latam, French-speaking countries in Europe and North and West Africa, and Edu Canada West in MENA region. Okay, so thank you so much. I'm sorry about the minutes that we went over. We were too excited about this. I hope this helped. We did this for you and for us. In order to help you, we need to understand about students. And we need to understand what's important and everything that affects them, so we can better and we can improve our marketing, our communication with them, in order to be able to help universities. So thank you so much, and that's it.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone. Now, we're going to be closing the event soon, but feel free, if you have any final questions on the chat, you can drop here. I think Julio and I can stay an extra 5 minutes, but the rest of you, thank you so much for attending. Paige and Ellie, Gina, all of you guys, hope to see you in person very soon. And one last thing, if you have specific things that you would love to know about the market that you're targeting, come talk to us, right? Reach out to us. Maybe we can put a survey together and really bring valuable insights, right? So again, reach out to FPP, reach out to me at Finoo, and we'd love to carry on the conversations and see how we can even help you guys even further, right? There's a lot. We are all under those uncertainties, so yes, let's stick together.
Yes, thank you, Kadu. Gina, we will send you this presentation to everybody by email. Thank you so much, and hope to see you in one of our events coming up. Okay, goodbye.
All right, take care, folks. Have a good one. Bye.